Hey, what's up everybody? It's Dan Pickett here at Launch Academy, here to bring you another and one of the final episodes of the HTML show. We're wrapping up our final detailed page here and focusing on the information, the class notes section, and then the launchers also watch section. And what we're going to do is we're going to finish the mobile design today, hopefully have some time to start accommodating wider resolutions, and we'll really be coming around the corner. I expect to be complete in the next episode or so, and from there we'll unlock some bonus content and some additional coursework that may be a little bit tangential from what we have here. So be on the lookout for that and special opportunities to engage with us in some of that bonus content. All right, so diving into today's episode, we want to focus on this grid layout. And we talked a little bit about that in the previous page. And we were dealing with primarily the episode listings, if you remember. And that's actually visible and available to us on the index here. And if you remember, we had all of our images displaying in this way for a mobile device. And then when we expanded the width or turned off, say, mobile mode, they started to cascade into 3 columns. We want the same thing happening here in our class notes section, in our launchers also watch section. So we're going to take advantage of Foundation's grid framework as a mechanism to support such an initiative. So let's dive in. All right, so if we go back to our detail page, if you remember, we got as far down to the end of the black top section here. And what we're going to want to do is we're going to want to start right here in this white space and get our class notes section going. So let's go ahead and do that. We're going to open up our or detail.html. Bump up the text a little bit here for you. And let's change your theme to something darker. Great. All right. So what we have to do is focus on getting the markup right, and then we'll stylize. Again, decomposing the problem here, we're going to focus first on this class notes section, and then we'll dive into the launchers also watch section. But first, let's start here and get the class notes in the right format and in the right structure. So the first thing that we're going to do is we have to do some reorganization of our headers. Now, as we get further down the page, we see, and it's become clearer, that we've essentially got 2 headlines that really belong as H2s. So the H2s for the class before this one and the class after this one really is no longer as important as the headline class notes in launchers also watch. So what we have to do is refactor our CSS in our work here to reflect sort of an H4 and H3 pair rather than an H3 and H2 pair. So we're going to just go ahead and make those changes. And we expect that that's going to break things for us in the context of, sorry, this should be an H4. This is going to break things for us in the context of our CSS. So we're intentionally breaking things knowing that we're going to have to refactor and reorganize our CSS. See how that now has changed? So now what we have to do in our CSS is modify that H3 rule. And I believe we're in the main episode navigator. So we're going to look for an H3 rule here, and we're going to change that to H4. And then right below it, we can change that H3 rule. And hopefully we get back to where we were. Excellent. Now the H2 space is freed up for me to create a subsequent section. So I'm going to create the launchers also watched. The class notes section here. And I'm just observing Foundation's framework here. I think class notes was the terminology we used. Great. All right, and I'm not going to worry too much about the style right now. I want to focus on the semantic nature of this page. So I'm going to create another row. Class columns, and this is going to go the full width on a small device, and this is going to be an image of me. And I've already put an image of me here ahead of time in anticipation of this episode. So we're going to mark up this column and then the actual course notes, and then we'll do the icons here on the right. And when you're using an image, don't forget to use an alt tag for accessibility purposes. Make sure that renders properly. And that image is, of course, going to be too big, but we'll worry about that in the styling of this column once we get there. All right. All right, so that's a good baseline for where we want to go with the first sort of portion of the class notes. So let's dive into some styling. So the first thing that we're going to want to do is change the H2 styling to reflect this class notes with this underline on it. So we're going to make it blue, or aqua as we've been referring to it, probably make it a little smaller, and we're going to introduce more white space between the black and the light blue here. Okay, so first thing that we need to do is provide a special class here. So we'll call this main page title. And we'll do an H2, and we want to use that aqua color. And we want that border. And what we may do is actually refer back to our index page and see if there's any styles that we can kind of hijack or incorporate. And it looks like there is actually. This overview element here is quite reusable. So let's go ahead and snag that. So I'm going to use Chrome Inspector here to see where that's coming from. That's in Overview H3. So what we're going to do is we're going to generalize this and give it the same main page class and main page title, and we can use that in the context of both pages. And this is sort of the process when you're dealing with multi-page apps, is you get very specific and then you have to abstract out and generalize about behavior that you want to use repeatedly across pages. So we're going to go to that overview ID, and we're going to assign a class, main page title. And for those H3s, we're going to, interesting, that's an H3 in this case. Well, we can apply the same rule. Oh, we want to actually overwrite an existing rule here. So we're going to go to that overview selector. Here it is, overview H3, and we'll make it dot main page title H3 and dot main page title H2. And let's see what that looks like in the context of our index. Make sure we didn't break anything. Looking good. And then here, we're looking pretty good. Awesome. Now again, we want to be working in a mobile first experience. So we pull that accordingly. getting that funky scrolling issue again. Gonna close out here and come back in. Sometimes the responsive tool doesn't give you the full vertical length of the page. It's a bug in Chrome's developer tools here. Now I can scroll. All right. So if we pull up our image again, here we go. Oop. Get this all the way over. All right, so we've got the class notes. It's pretty close. It's not pixel perfect by any means, but it's on the right wavelength. All right, so let's move on to the author column here. And what we want to do is we want to get that image a bit smaller. So we're going to need to set an image width. I will make it 200 pixels across. Let's see how that looks. Great. Okay. And I think for the mobile display, we'll want to center this. So we're going to actually set on the author, we're going to text align center here. All right. So that should move our image to the center. Great. And then our P tags are going to need special styling as well. It looks like they're black, actually a different color than our default content. And we're going to want to set the margin bottom lower. And again, I can't scroll all the way down. That's frustrating. All right, so we've got the black text working okay. It looks like we probably have some margin top to deal with, or some line height, it looks like. Yeah, there's a lot of white space due to the line height, so we want to adjust our line height here to be 1.2. Let's tighten that up nicely. And then we want the name. If you remember, we assigned a special selector for that so that we can make the font weight bold. There that is. All right, let's see how close we are to the design. So that is going to actually be larger in size. And I still think we need a little less white space in between those two. So I'm going to actually have the margin bottom be 0. All right. And then we may want to set the margin bottom on the image so that there's a little more white space between the image and the text. Yeah, a little more. I would say even a little more. So let's do 1.0 rem, see where we get. Great. Okay. So again, we know that we've got some display issues on wider displays. I'm just kind of optimizing for the mobile here. So just to prevent some of the scrolling issues that I was having, let's just make the window itself a little smaller. Great. Okay. So now we're probably ready for the next column. And notice here I'm using the small 12 class here. And this is provided by Foundation. And what this is saying is for all small devices or mobile devices, I want this column to occupy the full width of the device. So later we're going to specify some large prefix classes so that we can get that 3-column display. But for now I'm just focused on that mobile first display. So let's again look at the design, see what we have. So we have a release, and then some lorem ipsum text, and then a show more box. Okay. We can just make up a date here. And then I think the rest is lorem ipsum, right? Yep. So we'll create 2 paragraphs of lorem ipsum just to create consistency with the design. And I'll just abbreviate this one a little bit. Great. All right. And then we're going to want a special link for showing more. And again, we'll check the language here. It says show more with a caret. So I'll use font awesome here. FA caret. Actually, I need to look up this on the documentation here. Icons. All right. Caret up. I was right. FA caret up. And we get that. And let's see what that looks like by default here. So you get the P text and then the show more link. We've got quite a bit of work to do here on this show more link. So what we're going to do is we're going to name this column as episode notes. And I'm going to use that show more selection here. And I'm going to change the display of the anchor to a block. Remember that anchor tags by default are inline elements, so we have to change that default display. And we're going to set the width to auto. And the text align will already be centered. Font weight bold. And then we're going to want a border of that subtle gray. So let's see what this looks like. Make sure that that episode notes a.showmore, a.showmore, episode notes. So why are we not getting our border here? Oh, we want it all the way around, not just on the bottom. All right, there we go. And we want the text to be aligned in the middle there. That gray is a little too dark. We want a more subtle gray. It should actually match the color of the text. So let's go ahead and use that 777. And then we want to use the aqua, I believe the aqua color for the color of the link. There we go. Now we're getting closer. All right. So it looks like we've got some padding work to do. Add a little more padding. So we'll add 10 px of padding on the top and the bottom there. And that's a little too much. We'll do 5 px. It will also make the font size a little bit smaller. That's looking pretty accurate. You be the judge. Let's see. Actually, it looks like that's using a non-standard blue actually in the link, which would kind of go against our style guide. So we're going to take some creative license here and decide not to incorporate that darker blue because we've got a consistent aqua color that we want to use throughout the document. And particularly when you're dealing with design-oriented things, it's generally a good idea to try to remain as consistent as possible. So I'm going to override the direction of the design here and stay consistent with our overall look and feel. All right. So on to the column with the icons. Actually, it looks like we're a little more subtle in our gray here on our border. Let's go ahead and change that up. Yeah, that looks a little better. There we go. Okay, so let's move on to the next column. And what do we want to do here semantically? So we've got a listing of views, the time. So I may want to use a definition list here for the representation of these two objects. And we're going to actually not do the Facebook in tweet buttons and things like that. We'll leave that for another episode to show you how to embed some of those. But we're going to tackle this set of icons here with the eye and the views. So let's go ahead and do that. Episode stats, TT, let's see what we get for eyes. Eye, great, FAI. And we'll just make up a number here. And we'll do a similar thing for the duration. What do we got? Fun, awesome. We're looking for a clock. Clock O. Now, were this like an actual design project, we'd want to take the iconography provided and do it exactly. But we're dealing here with a little bit of improvisation using the design more as a guideline. So we're okay deviating a bit. All right, so you can see we've got some work to do in terms of stylizing that section, mainly because of the semantic nature at which we chose to make this list using a definition list. So we're going to have some work here. So we'll say that this was an hour and 11:43. Let's see how that renders. All right. So what we want to do is we want to add a little more definition to this definition list. If you see here, we're breaking for every definition title and every definition data. So we want to actually eliminate that so that they show up side by side. So in our episode stats CSS, we're going to say for DD and, well, DD, we're going to display inline block, and for episode stats DT, we're going to clear left. And let's see if that gets us closer. It doesn't actually clear our section there, which is not ideal. So I think clear right. Let's see what happens here. Nope, that goes back to the block that we're doing. Get these back to inline blocks, and then for DL, we want to clear to the right. I think we may actually have to float these in order for clears to work. And we do? All right, perfect. All right, so now we've got something to work with. Now we just need to adjust our font sizes and some of our white space to accomplish the same aesthetic. That's looking a little better. All right. And then we add, let's see what the doctor ordered here in terms of positioning. So it looks like there's a healthy amount of white space there. So margin right, we'll say 4 REMs. Let's see how that gets us. That's a little too much. That's getting closer. Probably 2 REMs will get the job done. Yeah, we'll go 1.75. All right. And then I think too, what we'll want to do is set a uniform width on the icon, which is important. So notice here that your eye is a little bit wider than our clock. So that's having an effect on how these are left justified. So we want to set a width that makes sense. And we can be pretty opinionated here and just back off our margin right based on this width. So let's see what 1 REM gets us. Now we've got a nice consistent left justification here, which is looking good. We want to remove that views column there. Awesome. Okay. And we want to add some white space here. We'll say margin top. We'll say 3 REMs. We'll make it 2 REMs. All right, that's looking pretty good. And again, we're optimizing for the mobile display here. So we're looking at something like that. And I think what we want to do is we want to center this list. I think I'll leave it actually the way it is. I think it looks fine. All right. And then we're ready to move on to the Launchers Also Watched section here. So we can start a new div, and we're going to reuse that div that we defined previously. So we can literally just copy and paste this. And that wrap is okay. Great. I think what I will do is reduce the font size of that H2. It seems a little bit big in comparison to what we have here. So I'm going to isolate it to only the H2s. That's a little better. Great. Okay, so what we can do with this listing is we can actually take advantage of the work that we did on the previous page. So again, what we're trying to do here is create reusable components for the purposes of our design. So what we're going to do is we're going to use this exact same setup semantically to represent the Launchers Also Watch section. So much of the work is already done for us, and it's as simple as just copying and pasting these episodes, which is really great. So we'll just take this, we'll take a full row, so that's 1, 2, 3. So we'll take this, bring it over, and close all our tags. And hopefully we get a functional Launchers Also Viewed Also Watch section. We've got two episodes there. We want 3, so I didn't copy enough. So I'm going to take that out, and I'm just going to duplicate what we have here twice. Let's see what we have here. 1, 2, so I need a third one. So I'm going to copy over this column. And there you have it. And thanks to the wonderful work that we did on the index page, we now have a fully functional and responsive section. So there's really not a tremendous amount of work here that we have to do as we get responsive for that particular section. So we've got a completed page here, and we'll be ready to tackle higher width resolutions in the final episode of the HTML show. I hope you join us as we wrap up, and I'm looking forward to hearing all you thought about the course and where you're headed from there. If you haven't yet joined us, I invite you to get involved in the conversation on Slack. It's the best way to get informed about some of the bonus content that we're going to be producing, as well as getting more information about both our online and ongoing on-campus programs. So I hope to see you in Slack. Definitely join us, and I'll see you in the next episode. Thanks. Bye-bye.